Good morning or afternoon. It's 12 noon here on the East Coast. So I'm excited to get started with our book study that I'm going to be doing every Tuesday in the month of January at 12 noon. Today, I am going live on Periscope as well, but I'm not going to go live on Periscope every Tuesday for the book study. So if you want to be part of the book study and you're just on Periscope, please make sure to join us on YouTube Live or in our private mentoring and training group on Facebook. So the book study is going to continue for the rest of the month, every Tuesday at 12, and it's going to be live in our mentoring and training group with Dr.Faith or on YouTube Live. So I'm excited to see all of you guys. We have 3 cameras going out, so I will be looking and smiling at each angle. So we right now, for the month, we're going to be studying this simple little book. Everybody who's read it has just said how life-changing it is, how impactful it is. It's like a big, nuclear weapon in a little pistol. And so I'm going to be walking you guys through some of the tenets in this book for the next 4 weeks, especially because it's the beginning of the year. And a lot of times the reasons why we cannot move forward in our the plans that we set, in the plans that God has for us, is because we simply have not dealt with our past. And when I'm talking about our past, I'm not necessarily talking about things that happened when you were 12 or 8. It could be last year. Some of us will have a difficult time moving forward in this new year simply because we're still hanging on things like regret or shame or doubt or fear. So I'm going to be working with you guys to deal with some of those things and walk you through them. And so I'm just so excited. So on my website, AskDrFaith.com, we have the ebook, the electronic version only, on sale for $4.99. It's normally $12. But you can go to AskDrFaith.com and get this for $4.99. It's only for 24 hours, so we only have a couple more hours where that sale is going to be available. Once you have purchased it, you get a receipt. On the receipt, there should be a link to say download your book here. Download your book here. It's on your receipt, and that's how you get your electronic version of this. Now, if you're a Prime member or any of that stuff, you could also get this on Kindle on Amazon. I believe it's for free if you're a Prime member. You could also order the hard copy books off of Amazon or Barnes & Nobles if you want to follow along for the next several weeks. So I'm excited to jump in. YouTube, you guys have a weird thing going on there, but we're just going to manage it for today, and we'll fix it later. So this is what we're doing. So today I'm going to hit kind of like the intro, where, the idea for the book came from, and really get into the first concept, which is maturing in our love walk. And so when I started writing this book, it actually came out of a series of posts, and those posts were based on how I saw people react to different situations, to different hardships, to different conflicts, to different relational issues. And what I found was that a lot of people had what I coined as immature love. And immature love can always be seen by how you respond to a situation, by how you respond to hardships, how you respond to circumstances. And so that is what the first chapter of the book is about. And so what I want to do today is go over some of the clues that are roots of immature love. So when a person is not healthy emotionally, when a person is not healthy relationally, you will see some of these identifiers in how they handle circumstances. Now, we cannot talk about healing your past if we have not dealt with your soul. So the first half of the book really deals with understanding the things like rejection, and understanding like things like abandonment, and how to deal with those things even if they happen to you. I love this quote that's been circulating that simply says that trauma or abuse is not your fault, but healing is your responsibility. And so it is your responsibility to heal and get the tools that you need in order to become who God has called you to become. All right. So let's look at it. I'm going to be reading from the book and then just kind of teaching you guys as I go. So for those of you guys who have the book, you can follow along. If not, you can pick it up later. And I will take questions only at the end. So all you guys should know by now, unless you're new to our groups or to following me online, I take questions at the end, because if I start taking questions while I'm talking, it's going to deviate me. I'm going to lose focus. And so I take questions at the end when I'm done. All right. So one of the things that the enemy knows is that we were made for connection, that we were made for intimacy, that we were made to belong. We were made to be in relationship. We were made to thrive. We were made to step out on our goals and actually be able to do them. And so some of the things that the enemy does early on is try to deal or try to cause our understanding of love, our understanding of relationships to really be faulty. And if we, and if he knows that if we never really deal with those faulty understandings, then we're not able to really move forward. There's not anything that you can really do in this earth without the help of other people. And there's a quote out there that goes like, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go with other people. And so the enemy knows that if he can come in initially and deal with your attachment issues, and the book starts talking about attachment, how our initial attachments to our mom and dad really impact how we view the world and how we deal with so many different things. And so the enemy knows if we can have those areas of faulty, if we have gone through betrayal or abandonment, if we have had areas where we stepped out on faith and it didn't work out, or people left us in the cold, or people blindsided us, oftentimes it begins to create this internal wound that we don't even know exists. What happens is we just say, okay, that's fine, I'm moving on. But then when you get an opportunity to love again, you're very hesitant. When you get an opportunity to take a risk again, you're very hesitant. When you get an opportunity to try again, you're very hesitant. And it's all connected to these early experiences that oftentimes we don't know have actually deeply impacted who we are. So the book starts out in chapter 1 saying, let's start at the very beginning. If we're going to grow, if we're going to mature, we must get to the root of some of our hindrances. And so when we talk about healing your past, going forward into your future, that requires maturity. Forgiving people that have hurt you requires maturity. Seeing the world differently requires maturity. So while Jeremiah 1, right, talks about how God knew us before we were even created in our mother's womb, and that he has a plan for our life, the enemy also has a plan. He's not just sitting there like, oh, this is so lovely. These are beautiful children of God. I'm not going to bother them. He's like, oh, if there's anything on their life, if there's anything significant that they can do for God, I'm going to do what I can do to interrupt. I'm going to do what I can do to shift them so that they do not fully walk into what I have called them to walk into. Destiny is very, very much rooted in relationships, like I've said. You know, you'll have people who go through seasons like, I don't want to deal with anybody. I'm just going to do this on my own. But the truth is, you're never going to fully become who God has called you to become if you haven't mastered what your relationships look like. All right. So the more toxic our relationships are, the more likely it is, it's coming, and it's going to take a toll on our destiny. And so today we're really going to focus on our relationships first. In the next several weeks, we'll deal on how to get over regret, how to get over fear, how to get over shame. But I really want us to focus on our relationships, because if we constantly surround ourselves with toxic relationships, we're not able to fully walk into our destiny. All right. So the first thing that the enemy does is one, and you will find this on page 9 of the book. The enemy causes our first disconnection in the area of love through our parents' inability to fully love us. So some of you guys have heard me talk about mother wounds and father wounds forever. Some of you guys are in our Destiny Training Academy, where we teach you guys on this stuff in detail. But it's really, really important to understand how pivotal this is, how important this is. So there was a researcher, John Bowlby, and he asserted that only one parental figure is necessary for proper attachment. Children, though, are wired to have a healthy connection with both mom and dad. And so he was saying, you know what? If only one parent was there, that's fine. What is most important is that when we're growing up or when we're young, we have a healthy attachment with either mom or with either dad. But research has shown that when people have a healthy attachment to both mom and dad, they do much better. Now, I know some of you guys are thinking like, I don't know who my parents are. My parents were divorced. My mom was on drugs. Well, that's why I wrote the book, because the idea is that, yeah, we all should have this foundational, whimsical beginning where our parents love each other and they're together. And some people are so fortunate they actually had that, right? But a lot of the world did not have that. But the goal of the book is to tell you that even though you didn't, there are ways to heal it. So let me read a little bit more here. Children are wired to have a healthy connection with both mom or dad. According to the model of inner healing developed by Bethel Church in Redding, California, our fathers, and I talk about this all the time in inner healing stuff, should provide to us a sense of protection, identity, and provision, right? And then our mother is supposed to provide to us a sense of care, comfort, and nurturing and teaching. And so if you grow up and you don't have any of those things, then a lot of what you do is you're fighting to find comfort. You're fighting to find identity. You're fighting to find provision. And you become very isolated. You say things like, I can take care of myself. You say things like, I'm just going to be independent and do me. But the truth is we were all made to be able to connect. The job of a mother is to comfort, nurture, and teach. And so if you don't have that teaching thing, you feel like, well, I'll teach myself, or no one cares for me. Nobody's ever there to support me. And so our earlier attachments create these beliefs that we have about people and about the world, whether it's safe, whether it's not safe, whether we can trust people around us, whether we can't trust people around us. The enemy knows if roots can be planted early on through our parental relationships, he can create thinking patterns that will impact the rest of our lives. And so when you're saying, I want to heal my past, I really want to get better relationally, I want to get better with my business goals, my ministry goals, you want to say, okay, are there any things that I went through growing up that have impacted how I view the world, how I view other people, how I see the world to be? Is it safe? Is it not safe? Because a lot of times you will find that's rooted in how your experience was with your mom and dad. All right, I'm going to bring this all together at the end. The next point, this is in chapter 1. It says, another source of immature love is woundedness in your relationship with your friends and your siblings. So level 1 is mom and dad, right? So you got to ask yourself, what is going on in that relationship? Am I sure that there's no bitterness, there's no unforgiveness towards my natural parents? Once you have gone through that, the next thing is your siblings and your friends. So the job of our siblings and our friends is to give us accountability, is to give us covenant. And so if you have, relationships where maybe you were abused by a sibling or a cousin, or you had friends later on who made you feel like you felt like you were not worth anything or you're not good at anything, you're going to have a belief system about people based on your siblings, based on your cousins, based on your early friendships. And sometimes it's not even your early friendships. Sometimes it could be later down the road. So if maybe you got into a relationship in high school and it ended up horribly, now you can't trust women or you can't trust men, or maybe you had a boss and he made a pass at you. So now you don't feel comfortable with authority or leadership. You want to start really investigating your relationships, because who we are, how we act, how we behave is not just based on, oh, this is just me. No, a lot of times it's connected to experiences that you've had. So I've said things before, like some of us think we're introverted, but we're really wounded. And the truth is we say, oh, we don't do people. We're just quiet. We're just shy. But the truth is you have been hurt by people and you have retreated and you say, well, I'm an introvert, but that may not be true. And so part of the journey of healing your past is actually going through the relationships and saying, hey, the way that I behave around this topic, is it really because this is how I've always been? Or is it because it's connected to a wound or something that took place in my life? All right. And I'll take questions at the end. So just note whatever it is as I'm talking through this. All right. The next thing is, beyond our family and our friends, our culture plays the next greatest role in our understanding of what love should look like. Remember, we're still dealing with our love walk here. How we treat people, how we view the world, how we respond to conflicts, how we respond to hardships, how we respond to disappointment is all connected to whether we're mature in our love or immature in our love. All right. Different cultures display affection differently in different ways, some healthy and some unhealthy. And yes, I've said it. You know, some people will say, well, this is just how we do it. This is how my culture does it. We don't touch. We don't really hug. We don't really talk about things. We don't even really, you know, when there's been a conflict, everybody just kind of goes to their room. A culture could be your house, like your family. It could be the city or region you grew up in. It could be the country. It could be your religious culture. There's all kinds of things that teach us how we should respond to the world. We will see, and I'll talk about this in later chapters or as we go on with the study this in the next several weeks, how we can identify healthy and unhealthy love. But our cultures play a major role in how we relate to our parents, our children, and other people. So what I have learned, right, about people is that we are not one-dimensional, but rather multi-dimensional. Who you are right now, whatever's going on in your life, is a series of multiple experiences, your understanding of God, your understanding of relationships, your understanding of friendships. So one of the most important ways to grow in love and grow out of rejection is to make sure that, one, you have dealt with you and said, hey, is there unforgiveness? Is there bitterness? Is there anger? And then release those things. Begin to say, God, I release so-and-so for what they did. I release so-and-so for leaving me. I release so-and-so for, not being there for me. And in later chapters of the book, I go into how do you heal shame when there were things that happened that made you feel ashamed. How do you deal with regret? How do you deal with being inauthentic? Because a lot of times when we have brokenness or wounds in our personal relationships, it causes us to be inauthentic. So you don't really know how you should behave. You often put on a personality based on what you think people want or what people think people need, and not necessarily who God says you are. And so this is the groundwork for that. So when we're talking about growing in mature love, you cannot grow and mature in love if you're still in toxic environments. These are opportunities to show whether you've grown or mature, but it's really hard to say, I'm really broken, I'm really still wounded, and then the environment around you is really toxic. So that's what I'm going to end today. I'm going to talk about how toxic environments fuel immaturity and cause us to not be able to heal and move forward, all right? So we want to move out of it. We can counsel you all day. We can pray for you. But if you do not leave a toxic environment, it is really hard. Now, I understand this. If you're a child, if you're a teenager and you're in your mama's house, you can't just pick up and leave. And so I'm going to give some ways in which you can manage a toxic environment. But oftentimes, if you stay in it, your reactions to the world and how you handle people is going to be faulty and it's going to be broken. All right. So people in the environment. So when you're in a toxic environment, these are clues that you may be in a toxic environment. People in the environment are fueled by competition, gossip, and comparison. And this is not just in families. This is in churches. This is at jobs or at work. This can be in a family where everyone talks about each other. Parents put kids against each other, or people are often compared to others. So this could be in any kind of scenario. The people in an environment that is toxic always operate in fear and in shame. So if you know one of the things that you're struggling with is fear or shame, you want to check your environment and say, do I struggle with this because the people around me make me feel ashamed? Do I struggle with fear because everybody around me is also fearful? Or maybe they have warned me to not step out and try things or do new things. You want to assess all of that, all right? The people in the environment are not open to mistakes or perfectionism. So one of the things that you can assess is, did I grow up in an environment where I couldn't make mistakes? Am I in an environment right now where there's a lot of perfectionism, where perfectionism is pushed? If you're in that type of environment, it's going to cause you to really behave and act in a way that will please the people around you, but not necessarily be who you are. And so part of this journey is doing the early inventory. Is my environment healthy for me to even begin to heal? The next thing that we see in a toxic environment is that the people in the environment put people against one another. Like I said earlier on, they will cause you to fight back and forth. They will cause you to be in comparison. They will not be able to see the goodness. So I see this in churches sometimes when the leader has an orphan heart. What he will do oftentimes is he will exalt one gift for maybe 2 weeks and then exalt another one and then, compare them. When people are orphans themselves, when people are broken themselves, they will get identity from the opportunity of kind of leading other people. And if they're not healthy, they're going to lead other people in a toxic way. And so oftentimes you can look at your environment, and if there's a lot of comparison, a lot of competition, if there's a lot of leadership or hierarchy where it's like whatever the leadership says goes, or even in a family where the parents were like, it is my way or no way, you're going to see that there are going to be habits of people that are unhealthy. The people in the environment are toxic. They do not give you a voice and discourage you when you speak up. So another way that an environment is toxic is that they do not give you a voice and they discourage you. And so if you've been around people that constantly shut you down, don't want to hear your opinion, don't want to hear anything that you have to say, it's going to be really hard for you to grow and push out of that because that environment is constantly pushing you down. And so you need to assess and say, okay, wait a minute. I know I love these people. I know I love my family, but if at every family reunion, everybody's coming against me or speaking up against me, then there's some things that I need to work on and some things that I need to shift out of or even leave in order for me to heal from all the wounds that I may have. The people in the environment do not celebrate individual success. So in a toxic environment, toxic family, toxic church, toxic job, individual success is not really celebrated. So when someone has an accomplishment, or when somebody has a baby, or when somebody is promoted, nobody cares. Nobody really says anything. And that's because in those types of environments, there's competition that fuels everything else. And so people like that feel like if I celebrate them, then it takes something away from me. And so if you're in that kind of environment and you're trying to grow and you're trying to mature, you're not going to be able to really keep going. You're going to go into what we call learned hopelessness, right? Because nobody sees you, nobody's acknowledging you, nobody is encouraging you. 4 more, and then we're gonna finish up for this week, and then I'll take your questions. So the people in the environment encourage secrecy and use fear tactics to keep people quiet. We're still talking about healing your past here, but in order to heal your past, you've got to be in a different place. So if you're in an environment where there is so much secrecy, where there is so much lies, our church on Sunday, we had to make sure that things that were happening in leadership was exposed, and we talked about it openly. Because one of the things that happens is when you're part of an organization or when you're part of a family and the parents act like whatever is happening is not happening, the people are not going to feel safe. The people are not going to feel like they belong. And so what happens in a toxic environment, people will say stuff like, well, they don't need to know that, or we need to keep this to ourselves, or we need to push this under a rug. But in a healthy environment, whoever is in leadership, whether it was your mom and dad, whether it's your boss, whether it is your leadership at church, they give you the information that you need to know in order for you to be able to still have the level of trust and to still feel like you belong. There are certain things that obviously, it's like, they were asking Mike Pompeo this morning some questions about the war that's going on with Iran, and they're asking like really specific questions. Well, there's certain things that the government is not just going to tell us for the sake of national security. Now, there's certain things that in a family that leadership in a church, leadership, mom and dad will not necessarily tell you because they're protecting everybody. But if everybody is not being protected, if everybody is being left out in the cold and only the leadership is being protected, then you know that you're probably in a toxic environment. All right. Let's see. The environment agrees with and views inadequacy, worthlessness, and lack and lack. So if you're in an environment, whether it's a family, whether it's friendships, because some of our environments are friendships, the friendships that we have kept, the relationships that we have kept, and what they do is they fuel your inadequacy. They are actually okay when you're inadequate. They're actually okay with you being less than them. They're actually okay with you not excelling. If you are in that type of environment and you already feel inadequate based off of previous experiences, the environment is not going to help facilitate bringing healing, bringing restoration, and bringing wholeness. A healthy environment will facilitate worthiness, meaning helping you understand that you are loved, that you belong, that you are worthy. It'll help facilitate feelings of adequacy so that you know that whatever you bring to the table, it brings God glory, and it is actually very, very valuable. All right. And then this is the last clue on how to identify a toxic environment. When you're in a toxic environment, you isolate anyone who you feel is coming against you. And we're going to get really into this next week, because a lot of what I see, especially around the new year, is cutting people off, blocking people off. When people leave a certain organization, saying don't talk to them, or blocking these people off. But what that tells me is that there is actually some toxicity going on internally for you. If you feel like you've got to cut everybody off that doesn't agree with you, that doesn't cheer you on, that even corrects you, right? Or if you're in an environment where if anybody doesn't agree or leaves or whatever, the rule is everybody cut them off, then there's a level of toxicity that's going on there. Lastly, the people in the environment compromise. And so this is huge. Usually when you're in an unhealthy environment and you're saying, I want to heal my past, you will see a lot of compromise in people in toxic environments in the area of sexuality. They will not be able to be disciplined in being able to stop fornicating, adultering, or pornography or whatever. And usually that environment fosters it or encourages it. You will see that there is a lack of financial integrity. So if you are in a place or even a church that doesn't give you, yearly reports of what happened to the finances, there may be something going on there, right? Or maybe they're just immature and they haven't learned that this is really important, that level of transparency. If you're in environments that fuel unforgiveness, just forget it. Forgive, but don't forget. Really, the goal of forgiveness is actually to also help you forget, move on. Some things are really hard to forget, and that's okay. But there should be an intentionality to say, I'm not going to continuously bring this up to my remembrance, because I will not be able to move forward. All right. And then lastly, what the enemy is trying to do, the reason the enemy is trying to hold us to our past is that he understands that immature love is birthed out of a lack of understanding. So when we don't know what we need to know, we're going to keep repeating the same cycles. In order for us to mature in love, in order for us to heal our past, we must know what love is and what it looks like. Because in order for us, some of us, to release some of the painful things that we went through growing up, painful things that we have gone through in church, painful things that we have gone through in families, we have to learn love. We have to master the love of God. And so next week, I'm going to go into the journey of how do I learn how to love in a healthy way? How do I learn how to balance being forceful about my boundaries, but also making sure that I am healthy enough to work through things that I need to work through in order so God could be glorified in my life. All right. So I'm going to take some questions now. It could be around this. It could be around healing your past. It could be around toxic environments. I just want to begin to walk you guys through that and prepare you really. Let me see what my hair is doing here. Prepare you really for an awesome year. And an awesome life, honestly, to be able to let things go and move forward. So I will answer some questions now, because I know that some were already being shared. So questions and comments, let's see here. All right, toxic environments are distractive. Yes. Yeah, so right now, narcissism, the toxic narcissist has become kind of like a big thing. Someone just commented that they survived being married to a narcissist. This is not new. I think that it was always there, but people just didn't have the language. And it's become more like common everyday language. But really, if you've ever been in an abusive relationship, there's some antisocial narcissism stuff going on there. If you've been in a controlling, super controlling environment, usually there's some narcissism and controlling stuff there. So it is a big thing. And now, the world is kind of coming to light. It's becoming clear what that looks like. So, all right, questions. Powerful Dr. Faith, good. When a leader consistently promotes certain people and seems to ignore others, is that a question or is that a comment? What if people in the relationship are toxic? Yeah, you got to get out. I started with this because you cannot heal and you cannot become all that God has called you to become if you know you're in a toxic relationship, and you need to get out. You got to get the strength, get the resources, get the information that you need to make the right decision to get out of that relationship. If you're married or you have children, obviously it is harder. So you need to go through counseling. Now, the person, if they want to go through counseling, that's a huge step forward. It may not be as toxic as you think. If they refuse counseling, if they refuse repentance, if they refuse moving forward, then it might be harder. How would you help a stepmom to a child that's jealousy of my kids and leaves a toxic life? It depends on how old that child is. What are some solid ways to implement boundaries in situations where you have no choice to be in? I'll share a little bit more of that in a couple of weeks. But if you are a stepmom to a child that's under 18, your job is to love them. The reason why that stepchild may be struggling with jealousy or maybe struggling with, feeling less than is probably because of their history and their background. And then maybe their dad marrying into a family that has children that are healthy. I mean, so your job is to love them. Your job is to make them feel like they belong. Your job is to help them understand that they're valued. And in doing that, you can heal that kind of stuff. Someone said, what about toxic mothers? I cover all that in the book. So get the book, Healing Your Past. And also in our online academy, Destiny Training Academy, we go through all this stuff in detail. You get videos upon videos in detail. So we're going to have a flash sale first week of February. So I'm going to be reminding you guys, for those who, as we're going through this stuff, you're like, I can't heal by myself. The book is not enough, that you begin to prepare to join us in Destiny Academy if you're not already there. Sorry, YouTube, I dropped you guys. All right. What do you do when you are, what do you do when you are in church where there is constant comparison? You can bring it up to your leadership and find out why there is constant comparison and what is going on. And maybe you want to make sure that you're not dealing with rejection, because when we struggle with rejection, we always feel like everybody's comparing everybody else. So you want to do the work in yourself first and then figure out what is going on so that you can deal with that. Someone said, what if your toxic relationship is a sibling? Once again, I covered that earlier at the beginning. Also get the book, Healing Your Past. We go into it in detail as well as in our online academy. But it's the same thing. You say, I love you, I bless you, I release you. And we're going to go into a little bit of how do you get out of these toxic relationships next week, and how do you emerge and grow in your love walk. All right, I ordered the electronic version of the book. All right, I explained at the beginning that you will get a receipt when you order the book. The receipt has a link. You click the link and you will get the book. If you are on Amazon, the Kindle version goes straight into your Kindle. All right, let's see. What do you do if pastors only promote or acknowledge their children, never acknowledge or inquire to utilize other gifts and talents on the next level? First of all, guys, you could tell a church that is interested in leadership development if they have a leadership pipeline. A leadership pipeline is a step or steps that are communicated in how leadership is raised up or promoted within the church. So the first thing that you would want to ask is, how is leadership raised up and promoted within the church? If you haven't seen leadership promoted or raised up within the church, most likely they don't have a leadership pipeline, and they're not going to have the tools and the ability to be able to raise up leaders outside of the church. And so you want to look at that on across the board. How do you, and find out from them, have a meeting and say, how do you raise up leaders here? Because I feel like there's a leadership call on my life, but I just haven't seen anybody released or promoted. That's what you need to do and meet with your leadership. How do you deal with rejection issues from childhood that affects your marriage when your spouse does not seem as understanding how you grew up because they grew up with a healthy home and family? Well, you heal. You heal. He doesn't have to understand how you grew up. It's your responsibility to heal based on how you grew up. It's not fair to make our spouses have to suffer with our toxic tendencies or our issues, right? Because we came up from a family that was toxic. It's not fair that we came from a family that was toxic or broken or dysfunctional, but that's just how the world is. And so once we find out we have areas in our life that are broken, and that's why one of the things that I do, and on our website, we have a whole course on marriage prep. And in that marriage prep course, we talk about healing your issues before you get married. Now, I know you probably didn't know, and sometimes people don't know, so I'm not getting hard on just this person. But what I'm saying is that as soon as you find out that you struggle with certain patterns and you struggle with certain things because of your family and your husband is not understanding, you need to say, you know what? He's probably not the only one who's not understanding. There's probably other people who don't understand. And if you look at all your relationships, this is the thing. When we struggle with inner healing wounds or past issues, they do not just appear in one area. They're going to appear in our marriage. They're going to appear in our friendships. They're going to appear in our jobs. They're going to appear in our career. Now, they may appear more in maybe like if you struggled with your dad, you have father wounds, right? And I have free videos on YouTube for those of you guys who can't purchase the book or join our online academy. But if you deal with father wounds and you know that father wounds always impact how we view our husbands, mother wounds always impact how you view your wife, then your job is to say, okay, this is a possible thing that's going to happen in this marriage. Let me work through it. Now, we can beg your husband to understand, but you can't make anybody do anything. And if you have explained to him the reason I act this way is because of this, the best thing is to show him that you're actually working on healing and going forward from that. I need counseling. I grew up as an abandoned child. Go to therapy. Go to therapy. If you have pastors that have a counseling background, go to them. I wouldn't go to every pastor because they'll say, read the Bible, pray about it. But if you have educated pastors who understand the value of the soul and counseling, I would say go to them as well. How do you know when you've released all your past hurts if you've prayed and released them a few times already? Oh, it just doesn't hurt anymore. When you think about your past, it's just a stepping stone. When you think about whoever wounded you, you actually can bless them. You can actually pray for them. You rejoice over the sufferings that you went through. Your ability to rejoice over the sufferings that you went through is an indication that you're actually healing. Let me check Periscope here, what they're asking. I missed a couple of their questions. How do you detox yourself? What are the, okay, that's what I'm going through right now. So as long as you're watching this, you'll learn how to do that. All right. How did you cope with residue? Let's see. How do you deal with residue guilt from feeling better about yourself after leaving a church? Why? Why would you feel bad that you are whole, that you are better? So maybe sometimes if you left people behind that are still there, that could be the thing. Church is covenant. And so there are what we call like soul ties, spiritual soul ties with your church leadership. And so it is hard sometimes to leave a church or to leave an organization because there's a level of connection there. But if you know if it was harmful and it was toxic, then you definitely should celebrate that you have left. And then there are people, you know, Harriet, what's her name? Tubman. She said, I'd have freed more people if they had known they were slaves. Sometimes people are stuck in toxic environments because they don't know any better. And so all you could do is bless them and just hope that they have a revelation of what's going on. All right. Let's see. Very good information. You know you're healed when you no longer hurt. Yeah, the rawness is gone. Unforgiveness is not even a thing. Bitterness is not even a thing. You can rejoice for that person. All right, let's see. I do need, okay. How do you begin to, okay, I already answered that. Let's see what else. Here we say, tell us how a person's supposed to be that's not in those past things. I'm not sure what you're asking. All right, let's see what else here. What if toxic relationship is a sibling? Okay, we covered that. How do you get out of a toxic environment like church you're a part of? Maintain respect for leadership. What you want to do is whatever your issues are, you want to try and address them with that leadership. And if that leadership is willing to listen to you, great. You may have a starting point to work on those things. Once you have addressed those things, see if there's any changes. If there are any changes, then it may not be as bad as you think. If you have tried to address your leadership and they don't want to talk back, if they don't want to respond, that's a clue that it's probably toxic. If you have addressed your leadership and you are not the only one who has the problem, because leadership has to deal with multiple people. So sometimes you have a problem, but it's not the problem of the whole church. And so they're not necessarily going to change everything just to tend to your issue. But if their leadership is wise, they're going to look for cycles. They're going to look for patterns. They're going to look for repeated things. And if the majority of people are coming to them for the same thing, and they're wise and they're mature, they should begin to do some internal work as an organization. But what you want to do is you want to make sure that you try to address the problem. If they didn't hear the problem, or the problem got worse, or things didn't get any better, you let them know that you are leaving. You give them 30 days notice, especially if you're on leadership. You want your leader to have time to replace you. If you have a lot of roles, give them 60 days notice that I will be stepping down, I will be leaving, so that your leadership can make sure that everybody that needs to be cared for, that is under you, is cared for. Worship team, any kind of thing that you do, any area of service that you give people enough time, and then you let them go after that. Sometimes pastors are really hurt when people leave and they don't respond very well, because you could imagine being a pastor and people leaving every few months, or however it is at your organization. If they are angry at you, if they're mad at you, don't take it personal, because they're internally dealing with their own stuff. And the book, actually, we'll talk about this in the next couple of weeks. How do you handle when people leave you or reject you? There's a way to handle it in a healthy way, but not everybody has those. But if you have given them the notice and you've stepped down, that's how you do it respectfully. If you're not in leadership, you ask to meet with them, let them know that you're leaving. If they can't meet with you because it's a huge church or whatever, send a letter, explain, and what I tell people when you are leaving a church, do this. Thank you so much for XYZ. Bless them for the things that they did right, because there was a season where you loved it there and you were thankful for them and you were excited for them, right? In this season, the Lord is transitioning me, or I feel, because it's not always the Lord, but I feel like I should move on to a different church because of XYZ. Thank you so much. And that's how the letter goes, and it should be that simple. All right, I'll take like 3 more questions from each platform. How to talk to leaders who don't see they are taking sides. What if your pastor say if you can't help you and suggest you to seek for counseling? Yeah, that's a smart pastor. If your pastor tells you to go to a counselor, they know their limitations or their time restraints. So go see a counselor. Go see a counselor. Pastors don't have the same training as therapists. So some of us have issues that require a therapist. We have therapists at our church that we refer people out to. Even though I have a background in psychology, I will not deal with mental health issues that are in my church. Like if I know that you're diagnosable, I'm referring you to a therapist. Or if whatever you're going through emotionally is so difficult, I'm referring you to my church, because my job is your spiritual care and not necessarily your psychological and emotional care, which is connected to your spiritual care. But when you need deep help, you need to go see a therapist. How to talk to leaders who don't see they're taking sides. They may not see it ever. And so you have to decide, is that okay? And make a decision about your relationship with them. I'm not saying leave or anything like that, but sometimes people don't see it. And if it doesn't have a large bearing on the organization or on you, then it is what it is. All right, let's see, 2 more questions on Facebook and then 2 on YouTube, and I'm done. If I'm in a church and God called me to be one of the pastors at that church and I left, will I still be a pastor? So your fivefold calling is not based on a church. If God called you to be a teacher, pastor, evangelist, apostle, or prophet, that's what he's called you to be. Now, in order for you to actually live that out, everyone except for evangelists, you need a church. You need to be part of a church. And not all pastors should start a church. Pastoring means shepherding. So you may have been called to pastor the women, or pastor a cell group, or pastor the worship team. But if you're going to pastor, you need to be connected to sheep. Pastors are shepherds. So you've got to be part of a church to shepherd, to pastor. If you're called to be a teacher, you could teach in the body of Christ. You could also teach principles in the kingdom outside of the body of Christ. If you're an evangelist, your work is going to be outside of the body of Christ, but you should have a church that you're connected to, that you're bringing into the body of Christ. Right? So yes, all fivefold need to be connected to a church, either for the purpose of their gift being manifest and expressed, or for them to be cared for and developed and trained and matured for. All right. Let's see YouTube, and then I will be done. I'm learning how to do that. There we go. How do you deal with the spirit of abandonment? We'll cover that in the next couple weeks. Buy the book. In the meantime, watch YouTube's. Can narcissism be generational? No. That is an emotional, regulatory, psychological thing. It could be spiritual. There may be generational issues that are connected, but usually when a person struggles with narcissism, there's a level of brokenness that have experienced in early childhood that can be dealt with. Some people may believe it's biological, but it's not necessarily generational. Let's see. What if the church you attend is run mostly by only family members? That's a decision that you need to decide. If the Lord has called you there, then you find how to navigate through that system. If you are in a church that seems like keep going around in a cycle, but you bring it up to your pastor, they do listen, and they do have a cover over when you leave, and they speak badly over whoever to leave the church. Okay, I'm not sure what you're asking, but I mean, you can let them know that that's not godlike or godly, but if they don't listen to what you're saying, then that might not be a healthy environment for you. I'm a pastor, and I have been concerned that I have withdrawn myself from the people. While I'm not the senior pastor, I do feel that this can be hurtful to members. Yeah, especially if you have people that you are leading. If at any time you're going through an issue as a leader, say, hey, I need a break, and make sure that the people that you are taking care of have the support that they need, even if you're not a senior leader. And senior leaders can also take a break. It's better to take a break than have a breakdown. All right. What if your pastor says, all right, good. I think we answered the majority. Periscope. I won't be on Periscope next week. I'm only doing the book study in our private mentoring and training group and on YouTube. And so if you want to join us next Tuesday, they will be on there. So in 20 days, we start our Wealth Transfer Academy, which is for writers, entrepreneurs, creatives, thinkers, dreamers, inventors who know God has given them idea, but they don't know how to build it. They don't know how to market it. They don't know how to sell it. They don't know how to create wealth. And one of the things that we talk about the first week of that course is how to break the poverty mindset and how to really understand why the scriptures, Deuteronomy 18:18, it says he's giving you the power to create wealth, and why God gives us that grace to be able to build the kingdom of God. So if you know you want to build your business, you want to build your company or your ministry, and you have no clue where to start, you have a couple more days to register at bit.ly wealthtransferschool.com. And then we will have a free webinar coming up in a couple of weeks around the poverty spirit, because people ask me about that all the time. And so I'll be releasing that information. Let's see what else. People have been asking me about the certification for our courses. If you want to be a life coach or a certified mentor, that registration is going to open up in February. And lastly, we are doing the part 2 of our dream interpretation course. So if you've never taken a dream interpretation course with us, you'll be able to sign up for part 1 and part 2. If you've taken it before with us, you'll be able to sign up for just part 2. So you'll be seeing that as soon as we start Wealth Transfer Academy end of January, you're going to see the opportunity to sign up for our dream interpretation course. You only have 1 month to sign up for that, because I'm going to do it on a Saturday. It's going to be from like 9 until 12:30, the part 2. So we'll give you guys that information. But excited all of you guys were able to jump on. I look forward to talking to you some more next week. Pick up the book if you have not. If you want a hard copy, go to Amazon, Barnes & Nobles. You will be able to get it there. And if you want the electronic copy on sale for just a couple more hours today, you get it at AskDrFaith.com, and the link will be in your receipt. All right. Bless you guys. So good talking with you. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Periscope.